started. Okay, well, straight on to then today's session. I'm going to hand over to John Dixon and Ralph Tittley to lead the session from here. I will turn my screen off, I will go on to mute, and I will hand over to the two of them to deliver this session today. So lights, camera, action, off we go.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear me clearly, everybody. So thank you very much for that introduction, Amanda. I'm just going to share my screen now, which best bear with me while I go through to the presentation, I hope. There we are. And I'll just go to that. Right. Again, just to re-emphasize there, if you can keep your cameras turned off, as Amanda was saying, it just will help a little bit with this, particularly, you know, as we get into the presentation, because it's so much to do with bandwidth as well. So I'm joined by Ralph, who's my colleague, and we're going to sort of do a bit of an introduction. But first of all, I want to just ask you a very straightforward question, which is slightly interesting because on my screen, I've got your screens down the side, but there we are. So I'm going to ask you, if you can just think about this, how would you describe the shape of a square? Okay, well, I would say something along the lines of a square is a polygon, 4 sides of equal length, and 4 right-angle corners, 90-degree corners. So that took me somewhere around 8 seconds to say that. However, what I want to do is to show you what I was just talking to you about. So you absorb that information about a square in about 1/10 of a second. And the reason, and it's quite an old trick this is, I'm sure so many of you have used similar things, similar means of sort of conveying how communication works and the power of visual communication. And that's what we're here to talk to you about. It's how you can start to utilize visualization of things in the world we live in today. Because obviously, as again, I'm sure you all know, the human brain processes visuals 60,000 times faster than it does text. So movement, we react to, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. And that links perfectly into the theme of our presentation, which is to do with these. And it's to do with the fact that many of you, most of you, I'm sure, have smartphones with very, very effective video comms in them. And in fact, it's the power in your pocket. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So we've got about 35, 40 minutes now to take you through this. A little bit of an agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about us, a background, about video, about smartphone video. And throughout this, we are, well, I say we, it's not going to be me. Ralph is going to be making a video. I'm going to bring Ralph on in a minute. We're going to give you some pointers to do with when you're videoing things, some things you should start to think about. We're going to look at editing, because many of you will be interested in that, and actually about what you can do with one of these. And then we're going to be looking, if we've got time, at presenting to camera and just giving you some tips on that. And then, of course, there'll be the Q&A, which Amanda is going to mediate for us on that. So, first of all, who are we? And what better time to introduce Ralph than to get him to talk about himself? Ralph, who are you?
Who am I? I'm the shorter one with glasses. And I started in the television industry as what we call a runner, and basically that meant I made teas and coffees in a busy edit suite near TV Centre in London. And I became an editor, which basically meant I stayed late at night and I edited programs through the night. And I ended up editing loads and loads of stuff, including Gardener's World and Most Haunted and all sorts of things. Then I became a cameraman as well, and I started my own company, and worked on all sorts of corporate and branded content. And so, yes, basically a career of about 35 years making all sorts of TV and corporate programming.
Thank you, Ralph. Just to say, Ralph, your volume is perhaps a little bit low. I don't know if you can increase it at all, but I just thought I'd mention that. By contrast, I started out as a writer, so I was kind of drinking tea that people like Ralph made for me, and a director. I worked in the theatre for a number of years. I then worked in broadcast television. I've run production companies in this country, in broadcast and in branded content. and I've also run companies in the Middle East. And I've made about 1,500 programs in the course of my career. These are some of the corporate brands that we work with. I'm sure you'll be familiar with lots of those, many in the Middle East. And these are some of the TV channels that we produce work for. And in fact, what's interesting about the world we live in now, that we're broadcasting or communicating, narrowcasting to you guys, we did a lot of live TV in the past. So this is something, you know, we're kind of familiar with, hopefully. So hopefully it will go smoothly, but you can never guarantee that, because you've always got to expect the unexpected. So what we do is we teach businesses, individuals and businesses, how they can utilize the power in their pocket into their business and how they can create content. Our courses are CPD accredited, I'm pleased to say. And these are some of the businesses that we've delivered this type of training to. What's interesting about this slide is if you look at the diversity of companies, what they actually do. So in the far left-hand corner, for example, Fresh Montgomery is an exhibition company. And then you look in the middle, you've got Barclays, and you've got banking, obviously, and you've got Clarins, who actually work in the high street, you know, producing makeup. So the uses for video within business are huge today, and the advantages are massive as well. You need to view video really as a core competency within a business. It's something that every business should be able to use, much in the way that we all now use Excel spreadsheets. But at one time, it was the domain of the graphics department, the accounts department, and obviously PowerPoint, which we're all using today, which was the domain of the graphics department. So you need to think that video today, and the pandemic has really hastened this into the forefront, is almost a business necessity. So without further ado, I'm going to get Ralph started, because he always gets a bit itchy at this point because he wants to get on with what he's got to do. And that's the challenge, the smartphone video challenge, Ralph. And what you've got is you've got 30 minutes or thereabouts to make a video. So what better time to hand over to Ralph to just introduce you to a little bit to iDeck, but just some of the principles of what he's got to do when it comes to camera work when he's setting something up. So Ralph, the clock starts now. Over to you, my friend.
Okay.
I'm going to just stop sharing. Hang on.
Yeah, if you stop your sharing, if I if everyone out there, if you on the top left of your screen, if you can just make sure you're in sort of speaker view rather than gallery view, then it'll bring whoever's speaking to full frame. So when I switch on my camera there, hopefully that's gone to full screen.
Okay, just before you start then, does everybody know how to do that? Just double checking. Okay, if you go up to your top right in your screen and click on view, you can switch it over. Just wanted to check everybody knows. Sorry to interrupt.
That's quite right. And basically what that does is whoever's speaking, it just makes them full frame. So that's
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
it's just
we've had all sorts of fun with Zoom over the last year. So, yeah, okay.
The trouble is we don't have any control about what you're seeing, so you got.
No, I know. Yeah. Yourself, okay. So. All right.
Okay, so hopefully you can see the camera output from my phone. So here I am in my home office, and there's my computer, and etc. And this screen here is a program called Filmic Pro, and it's a camera program that works on a camera app that works on your phone. And basically, there are three things you need to know about using a camera, and they are very, very basically framing, focus, and exposure. And we frame by the use of you can see there's a grid on there. There's a 3x3 grid, and we use that as a guide to our framing. And then we have these, which are called reticules, and you can see that as I move the circular one around, the exposure changes, and as I move this one around, if I put something in the foreground, you can see that the focus changes. And so I can take control of those functions of my camera in the phone and start to be quite creative with it. And that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to be editing a video, as John has said. I'm going to be making a video about how to make a cup of tea. And that should take me, well, hopefully less time than we've got. This is where it always gets a little bit interesting. So I'm going to be creating a new project here, and I'm going to get going and start And it is all from scratch. I mean, we have shot the material, obviously, so I'm not going out and shooting the stuff. And it's a little sort of instructional with pictures, just telling you the best way to make a cup of tea. I do have some voiceover I might have time to put over on, which I have pre-recorded, but we'll see how far we get. But I'm going to start by adding my first shot, and then I'll hand you back to John. So I'm going to go with this shot here, and that is a shot, what we call a master shot of me making a cup of tea in my kitchen. So I'm going to hand you back to John, and I'm just going to carry on doing this in the background. John.
Thank you, Ralph. That's brilliant. So I'll go back into the PowerPoint. Hopefully you can all see that now. So what Ralph touched on there, I'm just going to expand a little bit upon. So just to give you a little bit of background so that you're aware of things and get some tips and hints. Basically, when you're using your smartphone camera, and we do recommend you use the app Filmic Pro if you can. It's about $14.99, I think it is, dollars. You get it from the App Store. It works on iOS and also on Android devices. And basically, this is all part of the teaching that we give, which is to do with a system called iDeck, but I won't elaborate on that, because basically whenever you pick up your camera to shoot video, the three things you need to remember. And it would be great if it was an ABC. Sadly, it's not quite that simple, but it's FFE. And as Ralph said, that stands for framing, it stands for focus, and it stands for exposure. So these, again, whenever you're going to shoot video, if you remember those three things, I'm going to expand a little bit on that. So the framing is based on something called the rule of thirds. And I'm sure, again, a lot of you are going to be familiar with this. It's the way that we see images, and I'll explain why it's become sort of the norm, really. And when you watch TV tonight, if you just watch whatever whether you're watching a rerun of Line of Duty or whatever it might be, just look how things are framed with the rule of thirds. So if you look at this image here, it looks nicely proportioned. If we apply the grid, you'll see that actually the intersection, so the horizon is sitting on one line, the little bench seat thing is sitting pretty well on another line, and it all complies with the rule of thirds, okay? And you can apply it as well when you're doing an interview. If you're talking to camera yourself, use it. And again, when you watch TV tonight, you'll see this a lot, and it works obviously on both sides. And that's sort of how you want to look at framing. Focus, obviously what you want to be is in an image, so you want to make sure that things aren't blurry. So in this particular case, this bit of pipe work is in the foreground. That's what we want to be looking at. And the focus, so here is on the foreground on the smartphone, but I can pull focus and you can see the object in the background has now come into focus. So it's about making sure that you can see what it is that you're focusing on clearly. Exposure is about light. You don't want to be overexposed. So you don't want too much light. You don't want to be underexposed. You don't want too little. You want to be just right. And again, those reticules will help you to do that. Now, why is video so important today? Well, actually, it goes back to the way that we are hardwired. And again, I know lots of you are going to know this, but it actually is really relevant when it comes to video. When we lived in caves, when we all lived in caves, movement was absolutely essential to our survival, not only for when we were hunting, but also to protect ourselves. And that's the way, as you're all probably aware, we're wired. We're hardwired no differently to when we lived in caves. And we're wired to react to movement. So if something happens on screen, I can't help but react to it. In other words, follow it. And that's why a lot of videos that people to do where they're just sort of talking heads, just someone talking endlessly at camera, are really tedious and people just switch off. So what you need to do is learn to do something called cutaways. And we're going to come on to that in a little while to bring your program to life. So as we've said, we all process things 60,000 times faster if it's movement involved, as opposed to linear text. Not to say video replaces text, of course it doesn't. But today, because of these, we can all start to empower ourselves by using and creating video content. Video is great for telling stories. And obviously, it, as we've said, it's no longer in advertising and things like that nice to have, it's a necessity. And that's why you need to think about video. Video is easy to do today. This is Ralph and I, and you can see Ralph's just holding and using a phone exactly the same as this to capture a series of box pops, which are a great thing to use. And 62% of people who've been questioned or asked about this they find that they will gain more interest in a product after seeing it on a Facebook story. So again, it's the way that video is becoming the norm, if you like, in communications. What you need to be able to do, of course, is to produce a constant supply of video. And this is really important, particularly when you're building your social media awareness. And again, that's where these are great, because you've got them. You've got the camera, you've got the edit suite. And as we're showing you today, once you get the skills, you can produce really high quality video. The answer, we believe, is that you need to, companies in particular, need to train employees to produce video so it can be integrated throughout the business. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. So, as we've said, it's about being able to utilize your smartphone. So I'm going to jump back now, I think, in a second to Ralph, and we're going to get Ralph to look at the E in IDEC. IDEC incidentally stands for Individual, Director, Editor, Camera Person. And as you can see, if you look at the camera person one on the end there, you'll see those three focuses of that pillar of framing, focus, and exposure. This time it's looking at editing, it's timeline, transitions, and trimming we're going to look at. So Ralph, I'm going to just jump back to you if you're ready to have a little look at how you're getting on in real time. So Ralph.
Unmute my microphone. So hopefully that's gone full frame again for you. And you can see I've got a little bit further. I've got, what I've got here is I've got this timeline. Now, we talked about the ABC of camera work being framing, focus, and exposure. The ABC of editing is TTT. I know it's not ABC, but it's but it actually stands for timeline, transitions, and trimming. So basically, this is a timeline. This is a graphical representation of the shots that I'm putting together in time. And to get between them, we have what's called a transition. And these transitions are all cuts, but they could be a dissolve or they could be a wipe. And then finally, I'm going to trim. So for instance, if I want to trim this shot, which is a shot of me reaching into the cupboard to get a mug of tea, I'm going to trim that shot, and I can just drag that handle there, trim it like that. And there's my grabbing that out, and then I can trim off the end of that shot. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through all the shots that I've got of me making a cup of tea, and I'm trimming them down, put them on the timeline, leaving the transitions as cuts just for time's sake, but the next one's going to be putting the cut down there. And that's what I'm going to be doing, hopefully, with the time available to me, making a good go of this. So I'm going to hand you back to John.
So Ralph, you've got about 15, 17 minutes left.
All right.
just to make you really suffer. So I'm going to jump back into the PowerPoint. And as you can see, guys, this really is live. This is happening. So hopefully, in true Daryl Brown, it will all be revealed and everything will work out. And also just to say, some of you, obviously, we can't control the bandwidth at your home or at your office. So some of you may be seeing things a little bit blurry or with slight delay. I can only apologize about that, but that's not our fault. That's to do with the bandwidth that you'll be being provided with, really. So let's bounce on. So let's move on. So again, Ralph mentioned this, and again, it's worth just re-emphasizing. The ABC of editing is a timeline, transitions, and trimming. And it's just those three things that you need to really remember and be able to do when you're actually editing. And that's 80% or thereabouts of editing. We've both worked in the business for making programs for about 40 years. And I can assure you, in an edit suite, 80% of the time is spent on those three things: creating a timeline, how you then transition from one shot to another, and then the length of each clip on that timeline. So that's all there is to making programs. Of course, there's the skills to do it, but once you actually understand what you can do, it's actually amazing what you can achieve. And everything that you're seeing, Ralph hasn't transferred any material onto his laptop or anything else. He's doing it all on one of these. So let's bounce on a bit quicker on this. Of course, there is reusable. So traditionally, companies would produce reusable assets. They'd spend a lot of money. And this is a film we did for a company called Etisalat, which is the sort of BT of the Gulf region. So we obtained footage from NASA, a spacecraft looking over the Earth, and we then added lots of graphics and things to do with communication. It was all to do with messaging being delivered. And that's sort of the tip, and that type of material is still needed. But today, people are demanding more and more disposable or reusable video assets, stuff that you can create quickly. So this was something we did with Digby Jones, making a presentation. It was an event for the Federation of Small Businesses, and we again produced video content there, and we were training people, and they were at the end of it able to make films in under an hour and get them out there. And it does all revolve around this. It revolves around the smartphone and what it can do. It's quite a sobering thought, actually. What you're given in these is extraordinary. So 10 years ago, if I was going to buy a camera that was capable of producing 4K, I mean, today they can go up to, I think the latest I've seen is 5K, but they're talking about 11K, and that's to do with the resolution quality. And forgive me if we go into jargon sometimes, I do apologize. So, 4K is broadcast standard television. So, as I said, just a starting point, a camera like that would have cost you at least 30,000 plus all the lenses. And today, with these clusters of lenses that we're all getting, it's becoming even more sophisticated what you can do. So you're given the equivalent of a camera that can capture that kind of broadcast image. Plus, you're also with the editing app that Ralph's using, and you can see Ralph still beavering away editing there. That would cost you 10 years ago around about 200 grand. So it's quite staggering. You're given about £250,000 worth of capability in a smartphone. Just with a couple of very affordable apps, you can start to produce programs of really high quality. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the benefits of video now in business, because again, it's quite interesting to look at. Obviously, video does save money and resource, because actually once you've created something, you can use it again and again. Also, once you're trained and you can produce video content, it means you can just carry on producing. You haven't got to bring an outside agency in all the time. Training is a good example as well, because once you produce the video, then employees can watch it when and where they want to. And in fact, we all, I'm sure, are very aware of the way that we're delivering our training today is changing. We used to do all our stuff face-to-face. We now do everything by webinar. And in fact, we're going to a full digital version of what we do very shortly as well. Video is engaging. People, it's what we all do. We watch TV all the time. And in fact, people don't want to read anymore. They want to watch. We all seek out YouTube for entertainment. We also seek out video for information. I'm just going to check with Ralph. I'll just do this verbally. I won't actually switch over. So Ralph, how's it going? You all right? Can you hear me at the moment? Okay. He's obviously feverishly.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Well, listen, I won't jump back to you because people can see what you're doing, and we've got a lot to get to, and you've only got about 12 minutes left. So
okay,
I'll leave you with it.
Bye.
Good luck. It's quite good, actually. I can just do this ego, get on with it. Video also increases information retention, which is a really interesting fact. People remember 95% of what they watch by comparison with 10% of what they read. So actually, video is incredibly powerful for conveying information. And we quite often say that it's a really powerful device to grab attention and then use printed word to drill down into the information. So that combination of print and video is really the perfect way to go. So how can businesses use video? Well, I guess we kind of look at that, and and I think when you looked at our client list, you can see that everything from banking to makeup, everything from a hotel trade through to BMW, for example, and Porsche. So employee-focused content. Well, induction is a classic example. So starting right when somebody joins your business. It decreases operational costs if you produce video. It also produces clarity and consistency of messaging and of pace of delivery. And indeed, one of the large companies we work with, Chase DeVere, independent financial advisors, their CEO is extremely busy man, as most business CEOs are. But the fact that he can just create an update to update information for induction using smartphone is the kind of operational usage that people are now looking to do, as opposed to him physically having to go there and try and present. And also, of course, it's updatable. You can literally change it every month if you want to for induction. Health and safety. an obvious one. For example, one of our clients is a company called Global Marine. They produce oil rigs. A lot of their training materials to do with health and safety, because there's always new processes, procedures coming on board. So video is a perfect tool to use for that. And once you've done it, it can be multiply used, and obviously distance learning. How-to content is becoming increasingly relevant right across the board. So you no more lengthy manuals or wordy documents. For example, there's a company called Arctic Circle that we've worked with. They use it in the production of manuals. They produce chest freezers, for example, for like Waitrose. And those are big bespoke it's easy for me to say, big bespoke units. And they used to do written manuals. Now they do it all by video. So again, it's this use of video. It creates better understanding and alignment, they feel. Knowledge sharing is another area which is really important. So updates from CEOs, we've touched on it with induction, but again, regular updates from a CEO within a business is really useful. And employees feel better informed about how the company decisions are made and the direction the company's going in. And again, with smartphone, if you know how to do it, you can actually do it yourself. So that whole thing about knowledge sharing, about delivering messages, thanks to smartphone, we can all do that. Obviously, you need to learn the skills of presenting to camera, and I hope I'm going to have time to touch on that in a minute. Customer focused content, well, recruitment is a classic example. Recruitment now, thanks to video, is massively changing, and many companies are doing recruitment much more themselves these days. And indeed, company culture, it's really important. You get a wider reach, you tend to get better candidates, better cultural fit, and employee retention as well, very importantly. And I guess probably the one that most of us think of more for video use than anything else when we're initially thinking about it is for social media campaigns. So whether, whatever platform you're on, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever it is, to get information out, video gains much more traction. And in fact, social media posts with video get 48%. And in fact, I think that's actually increased in the pandemic, actually, more views than content without. Clearly, you have to be able to add subtitles and things like that. But again, that's a skill that's quite easy to learn. We're not going to do it today because Ralph would take slightly longer than that to add subtitles as well. But it's something, again, you can do on a smartphone. You don't need to do it any other way. Product launches. 62% of people are more interested and were more likely to buy once they've watched a video. And it's kind of the norm. I mean, going back to the how-to thing, if I want to fix my washing machine, the first thing I do is go online and look on a YouTube video today, not ring the plumber. I want to see if I can do it myself. And that's what people are doing more and more. Corporate social responsibility, again, really powerful. Use. Lots of companies are doing such great stuff and doing really positive work, and it's a great way to communicate that. You get better brand recognition, positive reputation, increasing sales, and customer loyalty. And I would say the most valuable of all of them, and the thing that we get asked the most about when we're training, is testimonial use, because nothing is more powerful than somebody else talking about what you do or the services you offer. And you can create testimonial video yourself using one of these. And again, the asset that it brings, it improves trust and it increases sales potential as well. So I'm going to see if how Ralph's getting on. I'm going to jump back to just get an audio link. Well, in fact, no, let's go back for a quick visual link very quickly just to see how he's getting on. He's going to curse me for saying that. So Ralph, okay. I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to jump back and see how you're getting on.
I've done my picture editing mostly. I'm just working on the sound now. I'm just done a title at the front there, and there's a transition through to the first image. And I'm now just going to add some music. So there's a whole vast library of music available to me here. Let me just turn up the volume so you can actually hear it. And this all comes actually available with this software, with the app, which is called KineMaster. And there's a free version, there's a premium version, but whichever one you use, you can actually still use the music copyright free. You just have to sit through some annoying adverts if you don't pay for it. But basically, you can add music. There, all good. So hopefully that's finishing around about the right place. And I think I will have time to add my voiceover. So I'll hand you back to John, and then hopefully the next time you come to me, it'll be for the premiere.
Let's hope so, Ralph, anyway. Okay, going back for me just to Karen. So what I just want to touch on now with you, if I can, is just a little bit to do with presenting to camera. And these are some real tips that will hopefully be a real benefit to you guys immediately. Obviously, the camera work and all that stuff, you know, with a bit of training, you can start to adapt your business offer to that, but also to advise businesses of a route to go utilizing video. When you're doing a piece to camera, and this isn't one of our IDEC pillars, this isn't one of the core pillars of producing video content, which we do in our IDEC training. But again, it's a way to help people to remember it easily when they're actually coming to do something themselves. So the ABC of a piece to camera, or PTC, again, forgive the jargon, is LLE. And what does that stand for? It stands for location, stands for lighting, and it stands for eye line. So let's just look at those. So the location is obvious. It's where am I today? Where am I delivering the material from? Now, as it happens, I'm in my office, which used to be my spare bedroom, but as we all do, we've had to adapt the ways that we live and work. So I'm actually presenting to you today from my spare room. Interestingly enough, one thing, just to show a little bit of depth of field, this is actually a blank wall, but I've put a mirror here, which reflects the other end of my house because it's actually got a more interesting, it's got like a brick finish. So it gives a bit of depth to the shot, but it's actually just a mirror bouncing it back. So the location, what does it say? Well, if you look at this, this is a shot of my front room downstairs, which I used to do quite a lot of presenting from when I was down there. Well, that one end of the room, yeah, okay, it's a kind of nice Ingle Nook fireplace and all that sort of thing, but really, is that the image I want to present from a business point of view? Whereas the other end is the old bookcase, and you know, a book full of a bookcase is a better background if I'm looking at the option of those two to use. So think about the location, think about where you're sending your message from and what that will convey to the viewer. Lighting, obviously, you want to avoid backlighting. So bright light behind you creates this effect. This is Ralph demonstrating it. Nice bright window, terrible for lighting if it's behind him. Similarly, if he just turns round and the camera, you know, the light is facing his face, it washes everything out. So there's no definition on his face. So ideally what you want to do is get some side lighting. So if you look at the way I'm lit, I've actually got some side light coming slightly above me. It's actually a slight skylight, but coming down, and that creates some shape. It sculpts the face. And again, when you look at TV today, if you're watching a news program, for example, and they're outside just grabbing somebody on a doorstep, they tend to sort of blast them with light. So you'll get that kind of no definition. Whereas what you want is a bit of shade. So if you can, try and find some side light. And indeed, you know, if you've got to, I've got an angle poise here, an angle poise light. When it's at night and I'm working here, I simply put the side light on the little angle poise, which gives me that definition to my face as well. Eyeline is really, really important and greatly neglected today. So what you don't want to be doing is talking down to somebody. And we've all seen this, and I'm sure you've probably all been told this, but it's worth pointing out again. Obviously, this is a shot of me setting up my camera. If I'm over the camera looking down to you, you get that slightly patronizing view. Whereas if I position the camera at an eyeline level, so I'm talking to you, so my camera on the top of my laptop is slightly above my eyeline, you can see. I think Ralph's nearly finished, so I've got a couple of minutes. I'm just going to finish this off and then we'll go to Ralph. Well done, Ralph, that's good to hear. So again, if you look at the background, maybe the wine glasses isn't the message I want to be conveying, that I'm sitting here waiting to pour myself a glass of wine. So again, put a few books in there and that background would be much better. Eyeline is about making sure that you're looking slightly up if possible, but definitely not looking down. So LLE is what you need to remember. You've been watching the Ralph Challenge with me trying to link it together. We're about on time for me to better hand back to Amanda for a bit of Q&A after this. But let's first of all, and again, I just emphasize to you, Ralph is going to be playing this. It will be a little bit dependent on your bandwidth at home. If you do want to see the video or any examples of the type of stuff you can produce, then our website's got loads of material on it. And you know, please go and have a look at that, because it will clearly show you what people are producing today. Ralph, I'm going to hand back to you. Over to you.
Very much. Okay, so here is the premiere. So you've seen me do that in front of your very eyes, and it really was done in real time there, as I wasn't cheating at all. So other than having shot the stuff beforehand and having recorded the voiceover before, everything has been put together in the last 20 minutes or so. So what I'll do is, if I get this to play full frame rather than in the window here, so I'll just go back to there, go to this one there, tap and hold. And okay, it hasn't got that option anymore. Okay, they've just it's all right, they've just updated the interface on this yesterday, and it's slightly different. Okay, I'll play it like this. Here we go.
Did you know that the British drink 165 million cups of tea every day? So what makes the perfect cuppa? Let me show you how. First, fill your kettle with cold, fresh water. Switch it on and let it come to the boil. Next, get your mug and choose your tea. There are many varieties of tea: Chinese, Indian, British. Put a tea bag in your mug. You may be interested to know that in the UK, we consume over 60 billion cups of tea every year. Once the kettle has boiled, add the water to your mug to release the full flavour within the bag. Give it a stir. The longer you leave the tea bag in, the stronger the tea. Now add milk to suit your taste, and sugar or sweetener if you take it. When you're happy with the brew, dispose of the tea bag. And now all that's left is to join the other 80% of Britons who enjoy at least one daily cuppa.
Well done, Ralph.
There you go.
Well done, Ralph. I hope you could all hear that clearly, but well done, mate. It's we used to do this live, this presentation. I was explaining to Amanda actually earlier, and it is amazing, but that was all done live. So we've got in, I think, on time for you, Amanda. I'm going to pass the screen back over to you. And first of all, can I just say one thing? Thank you to you and Kirsty as well. It was brilliant. You've been really helpful in setting this up for your members, and thank you very much for all your help in that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for a great session. You know, I was just kind of marveling, the same as, you know, you were mentioning when we started the business. For those of you that don't know the complete background and history of the CPD Standards Office, I'm not a born CEO. My background is in industrial psychology, and I undertook a very large research project when I was working academically into CPD and the effectiveness of lifelong learning across the UK for the workforce. And it was pretty popular. And it's a very, very long story, but it basically sowed the seeds for us to develop a new form of accreditation. And we were market disruptors at that point, and we wanted to give the world, if you like, a better way to filter and check lifelong learning, CPD, and adult education, because our research had sadly found that the quality of a lot of courses out there was highly variable, to put it diplomatically. And we just, you know, talked it through, and we'd worked with several professional bodies and regulators to do this research. And as I said, it's a very long story, and I could talk about research all day, because in my heart, I'm still an industrial psychologist. But right at the very beginning of the journey, I was just sort of reflecting on what you were talking about then. There was a lot of pressure from the people around me that I was working with to say, Amanda, you've really got to do some video. We need to get you on video on the internet. And I was absolutely horrified at this thought. I was used to lecturing, I was used to presentations. I was slowly getting used to speaking at large conferences, but I wasn't the thought of having something recorded and on the web that was there forevermore was just kind of almost alien. And I really resisted, and my team and Kirsty, you know, will verify this. You know, for years I said there's no need for there to be videos of me on YouTube. What we need to do is improve CPD and lifelong learning, and we need to give visibility to the number of fantastic trainers and coaches and online educators that are out there that are struggling to get the visibility, because the way everybody searches for CPD now is online. And if you're not good at digital marketing and you're not coming up on the first page, then you can't be found. But over the years, I've kind of been coerced into it. I think that's the best way to put it. And these webinars last year were a baptism of fire for all of us. And initially something that I particularly, I have to say, was really uncomfortable with doing. The thought that, you know, we would be running these webinars and then they would be on YouTube for general consumption. And you know, John, you know, your point about the fact that we now all have this smartphone in our pocket and it can just be done, you know, within half an hour. And actually that half an hour now counts as CPD. You know, it's just a kind of complete shift. Yeah. It's not even a new phase, I don't think. It's just a whole new world.
Yes.
So thank you so much for the session today. Okay, so we've got some questions coming in. They're looking very, very technical. So let me just kind of scroll through them. If we don't have the opportunity to get through all of them.
Yeah, there was a comment about the sound quality. That's the sound quality is actually very good. It's just the fact that to get it through Zoom, I've actually got my microphone in front of the speaker, so it's playing through my computer coming down the speaker, and so it's not the best way to get the sound through Zoom. But the actual sound on my phone is actually fine. It's as good as any digital sound, to be honest. So it's there's nothing poor about it at all.
Yeah, I saw a question there, Ralph, as well, to do with, you know, were you using a gimbal mount? Well, the answer is no, we weren't. We do use gimbal mounts, but we were actually using.
What's a gimbal? Can somebody explain what a gimbal is?
Yeah, sure. Again, forgive me. And again, this is the whole thing about technology. A gimbal mount is just a gyroscopic mount. So it's got so basically when you're holding it, I think Ralph's going to get one up. What it means is you get, it's like a fluid movement. So the movement is actually suspended. We used to use a thing called Steadicam, which used to be like a mount that would be on a whole person. Today, as Ralph's showing you there in his hand, there's something like that. What we recommend, though, is that people get basic kit to start off with. So you just need a sort of a little grip like this. These are about $20, and you can mount your camera in it. And
I see. So it gives a nice sort of control. Gives a nice flow.
So it's smooth out. And as Ralph's again showing, with a little sort of pixie mount like this, which are these little legs, you can actually start to create very effective video. Obviously, we've been doing this for 35 plus years, but it's staggering what people have done after only a few days, actually.
Absolutely. Okay, so because there are quite a few technical questions, what we do with some of our webinars is we take all of the questions and we produce a PDF fact sheet, which we then email to everybody that's attended. That will give, you know, Ralph and John the opportunity to maybe put some Amazon links in of products that you might recommend, or not Amazon. Everybody's using Amazon, local companies.
Yeah. What I'll also do is I'll export this video and I'll give you a link to that as well, so you can
wonderful
see the finished video in its full glory with proper audio.
There's a few questions about the app
Filmic Pro. Yes.
Yeah. What's your view on that, chaps?
Well, we looked at a lot. I'll let Ralph talk in a minute technically. We looked a lot at all the different apps that are out there. And apps are continually evolving. But we thought for value for money and what it can do, we find Filmic Pro really, really effective and really good. Of course, things change all the time. And KineMaster, which is the editing app, as Ralph's just illustrated perfectly, is continually being updated and amended. And so we find that that's a really good yes, but for on Android, David's just said, yeah, it's available on Android as well. So KineMaster's and Filmic Pro is available both on Apple platforms. And iMovie, there was a question about iMovie. iMovie is a very, very good app, but it is really basic. This will enable you to get to a higher standard quicker. I don't know, Ralph, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, David said it's getting poor reviews on Android. I mean, I'd give it majorly good reviews. What it does, it allows you to take control of the camera in your phone. It doesn't do anything for you. You have to still know this, have the skills to be able to frame and focus and expose. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to end up with good images. Yes, there's a bit of a steep learning curve on it. But it's extremely good and the results are very good. So much so that I've seen high-level commercials made on it. Bentley did some commercials made on it. There's been a couple of feature films made on it. Someone is remaking Star Wars on it, using it, I believe. So, yeah, it's all down to application. And the more you do this sort of thing, the better you get at it. And yes, I think it's ultimately it's a poor workman when he blames his tools. Yeah,
I mean, I think the important thing is it's like anything, isn't it? We all know that as trainers, that the more you can use the tools you've got, the more that it's used in the workplace, and there's a strategy evolved for how you're going to use video. That's the thing, because you need those milestones of delivery, and that will start to drive. And it's about anything. Start with baby steps. I'm talking to trainers, so I don't really need to say this, but we get people to produce stuff which is initially caption driven, as opposed to worrying about voiceover, then adding voiceover, then adding presenting.
You can get captions automated, can't you?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, there are ways to do that.
That was something that I only learned last year, that all of that can be automated.
Yeah, that's what happened in the last year or so, as the AI has got, has been able to extract the audio and learn how to, how people speak and things, and turning that into captions and all sorts. So yeah, so all that sort of thing's happening so quickly now.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Amanda. The amazing thing is, when we seriously 10, 15 years ago, we were sitting in edit studios, Ralph and I, spending what he just did in half an hour would have been a day's work, and that's even for an experienced editor. And I think that's the point. Of course, there are different apps, there are different things, but that's always going to change. Technology always advances. It's actually having the skills and actually knowing what you want to do with those skills.
Yeah, just a quick point I wanted to make there for all the trainers and coaches that are looking at doing this at the moment. One of the things that we've seen in digital marketing is with our trainers that have taken it on board very quickly, is that if you've got a video with captions that's running on YouTube, people are more likely to watch it all the way through, because we don't always have the sound on. Particularly, how can I put it diplomatically, those of us in middle age or slightly older, a bit like the noise. So that's, if you're making video, I don't know, Ralph, if you've got an app or something that you would recommend, that we can do this later in the PDF, but that helps you create those captions. That is very, very
like you said, there are a few ways to do it. There's some automatic things that do it. I actually use a function within Teams. You've got Stream with it, you can upload video stream, and that automatically creates a transcription, and I just copy those texts and then paste that into my iPhone. So you can do it that way. There's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's that thing, Amanda, about that it's just learning the skills to really adapt that into it. The technology is there, button pushing is there. It's actually understanding storytelling, and that's the important thing. I know I'm not just trying to promote our course, but what I'm saying is, when people make films, their starting point is what's the story, what's the beginning, middle, and the end, and that's the important thing to remember. Technology is great, but what's the story?
And ultimately, it's the story is the most important thing, because some of my favorite films were made in black and white in the 1920s, but they stand up because the stories are good, and it wasn't because of the technology they shot on. That's just, it becomes a spectacle, but it's the most important thing in any production like that is the story.
Yeah, I think that's a really That is a really good point. I think maybe, you know, for the best videos I've seen from trainers and coaches over the last years are those that have stood in front of their screens, which is what I do now rather than sit, and present to this funny little dot in the middle of the screen that's your camera, and get your head around the fact that actually normally this would be a group of faces, and tell the story.
And as far as that's concerned, I'll give you a quick tip. This is one of the things that we do. When you identify where your camera lens is, particularly if it's facing towards you, because we all turn back and think, oh, hang on, is it to the left? Is it to the right?
Yeah.
And then get one of these little sticky dots from Ryman's and position those sticky dots above, not on the lens, for God's sake, but above the lens. And that gives you a simple visual reference point. So the minute you're looking, you're not thinking, where's the lens, which side is it? You're looking straight at it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you. We'll capture all these tips underneath as well, I think. Okay, so there's a couple of questions about price on different apps. And Melvin has mentioned that he has a disability, so can't keep the phone still. And that some of this equipment is quite expensive. I mean, still relatively, you know, for some of our trainers and coaches, even this level of equipment is quite an investment. So do you have any?
Yeah, what I would say straight away is, if you're having a problem holding the phone, if you purchase these mini tripods, pixie legs, and a cage like this cage is about $25 from Amazon, and it will be delivered to you within a day. You can securely mount your phone in there, and then when you're editing, you can connect it on the mini legs, have it in front of you, and then all you've got to do is touch the controls on the screen, as opposed to have to hold the camera as well. And I really would, I mean, Ralph and I, we really strongly recommend as a starting point. These are about, I don't know, $25, $30. So for $50, you can get this. And that will certainly help, particularly the example you just gave.
We recommend a very basic starter kit of a mini legs, a cage, a lavalier microphone, and an extension lead, and it all comes in at about 60, 70 pounds. Something like that.
Yeah, a lavalier microphone is just one of these little clip mics. So it's just a little clip mic you can clip on, and it gives you an umbilical link. The weakest thing in smartphones is the audio recording. The editing actually is not bad these days. It's getting a lot better, but it's the limitation. So it's certainly worth getting an external mic, and everything that Ralph was doing, he did with an external mic. The effects mics are great, but if you're doing a piece to camera or recording someone in an interview, definitely use an external mic.
Okay, and just one question about lighting, because there's been a big focus on, you know, as people have got used to Zoom calls and things like that, about making sure that the environment that you're in is well lit. And how important is that if some of our trainers or coaches are investing in all of this equipment initially, can you just use daylight to make a really good film?
Yeah.
Or do you need to
No, I mean, to be honest with you, daylight is the best light to use. Yeah. If you can. Yeah. I mean, the problem with a lot of these sort of, I'll let Ralph talk, so he knows a lot more about this than I do, because I come from a directing background as opposed to technical. But from the point of view is a lot of these sort of ring lights and things that people buy, it goes back to that LLE example I gave, location, lighting, eye line. It just blasts you. And the thing about light is it should create interest and character, not just wash everything out. So sorry, Ralph, I probably, you should talk.
No, it's fine. You can see here, I've got a window just over there. You get that nice lighting on one side of the face, so shadow on the other side, and that gives me nice depth and character to the face. That's the sort of thing you should be looking for. So it's finding somewhere where that happens. Daylight is great because daylight is really, really bright. And actually a cloudy day is actually slightly better than a bright sunny day because the shadows are not as harsh. And so soft light is always important rather than harsh light. Avoid overhead light so you don't get panda eyes where your eye sockets are in shade. So light from the side with soft lights. That's my advice.
A trainer I was talking to last summer was another female trainer, and she was talking about the importance of makeup for both men and women when you're making film. And obviously there's a lot more male makeup on the market now than there used to be. What's your view on using?
Well, from a male point of view, if you're follically challenged in the way that I am, then actually what you don't want is this sort of constant crown reflection, as I call it.
Okay.
So a little bit of dusting powder, a little bit of sort of neutral powder is the way to go. You know, you can buy a sort of, you know, Boots number 7, but get a good brush. The brush is the secret. And also, when you first apply it onto the brush, just tap the tip of the brush to get the excess off, and then you just literally dust it on. And that shiny reflection can be a huge problem. So from a male point of view, I would certainly consider that. And obviously from a female point of view, yeah, what you don't, it's the fine line. You don't want too much makeup, because that can also be really detrimental. The main thing I would say, and I hand back to Ralph from a camera point of view, the main thing you want to avoid is shine, really. That's the main thing. Sorry, Ralph.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things I always say about making videos and putting things together is, if you notice something, then you sort of failed at doing it, you know. So in a way, the makeup, yes, it's useful, but if you suddenly think, oh, is he wearing makeup, then it becomes an issue, and you suddenly think, why is he wearing makeup? Whereas if you got it there and it's subtle, it just adds to it. Yeah,
no, that's why I asked the question, because what we had was a lot of and what we still have is a lot of people that are new to making video. And you know, many female trainers don't, and businesswomen don't necessarily wear a lot of makeup. So and then the videos they were creating, you know, they look very pale and very drawn, and then that doesn't project the right image compared to some of the other very kind of slick content that's being made.
I agree, but I would go back, Amanda, to the point that Ralph was making and that I was trying to make as well, which is, it's to do with side lighting, which will help.
Right.
And if you've got too bright a light, it doesn't matter how much makeup you put on. We had an instance not so long ago, I'm not going to say it was, we were on a shoot, Ralph and I, with a client. So we were doing and this client kept insisting on putting on, the woman didn't have enough makeup. And we kept saying, but you're not seeing it through the camera. Anyway, she insisted, and at the end, the woman ended up looking like Coco the Clown. It was ridiculous, you know.
It was.
So yes, as Ralph said, it's the balance. It's getting it right. But I would say, look at lighting. Before you worry about doing more and more blusher or whatever it might be.
So then, in the way that people would practice to do face-to-face presentations, is it worth kind of doing sort of like practice filming before you actually get into the content bit?
That's definitely.
Would you say?
Absolutely, and I think that's the important thing about a strategy that we talked. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, it was somebody who wanted to do a strategy for themselves, developing their own business. Then start off by doing some simple stuff. So maybe you do a film about what you do, and you just use captions. You don't try and do voiceover. So you get used to shooting images, cutting and mixing, and using music and captions. Then think about adding a voiceover. So that's the next level. And then a piece to camera. So you develop your skills, you develop your confidence, you develop the quality of the content. One final thing on that, I think what people will find increasingly is that people are going to expect more when they watch a video. In the old days, you'd go on YouTube and a skateboarding dog would get millions of viewers because it was a novelty factor. Today, you know, you can get that anywhere. So it's that people expect broadcast when they watch a video. And that's the whole point. We weren't able to get onto cutaways and things like that, but there are elements, very simple elements you can learn the skills to do, which will grow the quality of the video content you produce exponentially. It really will.
Okay. All right. Is there any more questions from anybody that we could just answer at this point? Otherwise, we'll bring today's session to a close. Both of you, thank you so much for what's been a really, really, I think, valuable session. As I said, you know, it's a critical skill. and we can't ever kind of promote this to our community enough. So I hope that all of you connect with Ralph and John. We've accredited the course. We can say this is fantastic. And if any of you need any assistance, as I've just mentioned on the chat, around other things, then do always drop me or Kirsty or the team an email, and we can give some advice. We'll send a questionnaire out afterwards, but if anybody is interested, perhaps John and Ralph, you'd be interested in doing a session for members at one point in the next couple of months or so, just really honing in on those technical bits. I think that would be really helpful, if that would be okay.
Great, yeah,
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Love to. Love
to. Okay, all right.
Can we just say thank you to everybody for watching as well, Amanda, and thank you again for your time, and Kirsty in particular as well.
Yes.
Pleasure. No, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
We're proud to have you as members. Okay, so everybody, go and grab a cup of tea. Zoom fatigue is now real. It's out in science journals and all sorts of things. So everybody needs to have a break, or watch Ralph's video on how to make a cup of tea.
If you need any pointers.
And we'll see you all again soon. So thank you so much to both of you and for everybody for your time. Okay, take care then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.